All right, welcome to the Silver Lined Relaunch. And you know those guests that just show up and you're like already just like digging it. You're like conversations are flowing. Well, today I have Shyamala Kiru, and you, after this conversation, are going to want to be following this gal. We're going to talk about her new podcast. We're going to talk about the 2 decades that she has had in therapy and working with people. And I got to tell you, the takeaways that you're going to get from this are going to be so significant. So you want to hang out, get started, and let's get into this conversation. You're listening to the Silver Lined Relaunch, and I'm your host, Hillary DeCesar, award-winning entrepreneur and transitional coach. Each week, I'll invite you to tune into inspirational stories, revealing how you too can turn ordinary experiences into the extraordinary. Feeling stuck? I'll share step-by-step strategies to fuel your ability to experience a life where silver linings are both abundant and possible. Hello, Shyamala. So excited you're here.
Hello, Hillary. So excited to be here. What a lovely intro. Thank you for that.
Well, and I have to say, for those that are only listening on audio, it is a shame because this gal is gorgeous. Absolutely. You said it's Sri Lankan.
Sri Lanka.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my background.
Okay. Lucky you. Because not only are you brilliant, you're beautiful. So those that are not watching this on YouTube or some of the other areas, you're missing out. You really are.
You're so sweet. Thank you.
All right. So this is where I really love to allow not only my audience, but your audience to see that vulnerability of a relaunch, of a significant relaunch in your life where it was impactful. And so many of us on social, we share a little teeny bit during that time, or we share afterwards like, oh yeah, this happened. And oh yeah, I've been through that, but we don't really hear the details. And so I like to allow my guests to share the details, talk about the silver linings, because yes, there are always silver linings to everything. And we've talked about even the worst of the worst. There are those silver linings. So I'd like to pass it over to you. Tell us, for those that don't know you, tell us about you, and then let's talk about your relaunch.
Yeah. So let me start. I always like to kind of give the context, the backstory, the background, because, for me, as someone who's practiced therapy for so many years, I'm still fascinated with people's backstories. Like, how did you get to where you are? And so I always like to start there. And so for me, I practiced as a psychotherapist for close to 2 decades. And as I was, in the field and I was studying, I did my master's in counseling, and then I went on to do a doctoral degree specifically in couple and family therapy. I became really, really interested in understanding how we interact, how we navigate our relationships, and how our personal identity actually intersects with our relational identity, and sort of how do we show up? How do we kind of move through the world, and how do we understand ourselves? I was like deeply fascinated by that particular segment of therapy. So I ended up specializing in that area. I got licensed in that area, and I practiced for almost 2 incredible decades.
So this is going to be so good because we talk a lot about identity, personal identity, but we're going to today be discussing it in relationships as well. God, this is going to be good.
I'm glad you brought up the idea of identity, because I think this was a big piece of it, right? So I'm, started practicing in my early to mid 20s is when I started practicing. I'm in my mid 40s now as we have this conversation. And I got married and I became a mom after I was already practicing. So I was already like doing the thing, knew the textbook, knew the clinical terms, like knew all of those things. And then I got married and became a mom probably within a 6 month period. Like we got pregnant with my daughter very, very quickly after getting married. And it was like boom, 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 boom. So I always refer to this time in my life as like this was the moment that literally it felt like the rug got pulled out
Mm.
from underneath me because there were so many changes. And I got married at 31, had my daughter at 32, right? So in some ways, I was kind of I think of myself as a bit of a stubborn person, eldest in my family, a little bit controlling, like definitely a very ambitious go-getter. Like this is the personality, right? Really strong personality. And so navigating life with my husband also has a very, very strong personality was really hard. It was really, really challenging for me to figure out how do I show up as my best self in this partnered relationship.
How long were you dating before you got engaged and got married?
That's a great question because I realized as I was telling my story, I didn't share that detail, and it's an important detail. We met and got married within 1 year.
Mhm.
Like 1 year. We literally, like first date to wedding date was 1 year, almost to the day. Right. So it was a huge transition for me, for him, for sure. And then enter motherhood, which when we talk about identity, that rocked my world probably like nothing else ever has. Right. And
So
so
what's interesting about this is that you had for 30 years you built up your identity, you were all about your career, and then all of a sudden you meet the man. And I
Mhm.
thought I was fast. I met Eric, and 1 year later we got engaged, and then 1 year after that we got
Yep.
married. But you
Yep.
did it all within a year.
Yeah. Cut that time in
And then,
half.
oh yeah, oh yeah. Like you said, you take charge. You're just like, well, I'm going, I'm
Let's
doing this
go.
thing. And then let's have a baby. And then
Mhm.
like,
Yep.
so your identity went from this concept of like, I'm this, psychotherapist, I'm super successful.
Yep.
And then I'm now a wife,
Mhm.
and now I'm a mother.
Mhm.
And it all happened in less than, it sounds like, 2 years. It just was
That's
like,
right.
whew,
That's right.
that's okay.
And interestingly enough, so most psychotherapists, we can practice with a master's level degree. So doing the doctorate was just something I really wanted to do. I didn't have to do it to
Tell
become
us
licensed.
a little bit about psychotherapy. What very
Hmm.
briefly for those that don't
Hmm.
know what that
Hmm.
is, because it
Hmm.
does sound, like yikes.
Hmm.
Whoa.
Hmm.
She's like, what is that? So
What is she
let's
doing?
hear, yeah, what is she
Yeah, so
doing?
it's in the field of mental health, and there's all sorts of different designations: psychology, social work, psychotherapy, couple and family therapy. I have the designation of psychotherapy and couple and family therapy. Psychotherapy is specifically looking at the individual and treating them based on their therapeutic clinical goals. So it could be reducing anxiety, reducing feelings of depression, managing stress, building confidence. There's such a huge gamut within the field of psychotherapy. And
But what I wanted people to hear was
yeah,
that you absolutely positioned this so well for me, because here you are, this successful psychotherapy, and now you're having, you have a husband, you have a baby, and this is where we're going with this relaunch,
hmm,
that you have all the tools.
that's
You
right.
have all the tools because this is what you've been taught. This is what you do with others. And
That's right.
then what happens?
Well, let me tell you what happens. Let me tell you. So I'm
Mhm.
graduating from my doctoral degree. I'm in my gown and I'm 2.5 months pregnant with my daughter. And the gown, of course, I'm 4'9". So I'm tiny.
Little itty
So when
bitty thing.
I'm a little itty
Big
bitty
presents, though. Big
thing.
presents. Little itty bitty, but
So
big
I'm this
presents.
tiny thing. And so, pregnant with my daughter, belly pops like almost immediately because it had like nowhere to go on my 4'9" frame. And so I'm graduating, not realizing I'm like, I've made it. I've got a doctorate. Like, how many people have a doctorate in couple and family therapy? I have this thing wrapped up in a bow. I am going to be so ready for this baby. I'm going to be so ready for motherhood. I'm just going to rock this, next
I know
phase of
exactly what to
life.
do to have this awesome kid.
Yeah.
I've got everything I
I've got
need to
it
have an awesome
covered.
marriage. I mean, you got it.
Totally, right?
Oh.
Like I've got it absolutely covered. And of course, lo and behold, literally the hardest time in my life was becoming a mom, like right after I became a mom, and probably for that 9-month period afterwards. It was like the second pregnancy or something, right? It was like that 9-month period after becoming a mom. I had such a hard time, Hillary. Like, and it wasn't just
This is
navigating my
giving
marriage.
everyone out there. This is like we're all taking a deep breath saying, hallelujah. You know, if she had a hard time, then I'm okay.
Oh man.
Oh, this is so good.
Yeah, it was such a hard time. And I have to say, I want to give this caveat. Like when you're training to be in the mental health field, in my master's degree, I was required to do 1 year of my own therapy, sit on the other side. In my doctoral degree, I was required to do another year. And so, of course, as a good student, checked the boxes, did the year, good, good, all done, right? Like I've met the requirements, I've done my own therapy, I'm good. I can honestly say during both of those years of therapy that I was required to do as part of my training, I was never fully engaged in the process.
Mhm.
That's like confession number one here, right? Like I was
Mm.
never fully, because I was like, I don't really need this. Like I'm fine. I got it together, right? I'm this high performing, ambitious, driven woman. I got this.
That's such a great point you just made. A lot of times, you know, when we're doing the coaching certifications, we're doing all this, you have to use yourself. You know, I have a degree in psychology, same thing. So many classes we had to, you know, analyze ourselves. Hey, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm doing just fine. And you get through the class, you get through the certificate, you get through all of that. And then you wake up and you're like, holy crap,
Like, wait a minute.
I'm not okay.
And that
Yeah.
was it, right? It wasn't until I became a mom. I remember so distinctly. It was at the 9-month mark. I was on my maternity leave. My daughter was 9 months old. And I woke up one morning and I was like, I'm not okay. Like, I'm not okay. This is not okay. I'm supposed to, in Canada, we have a year maternity leave. So I had a year off of practice to be at home with my daughter. And I was at the 9-month mark. I knew I was in like that final leg of like, I need to return to work. I need to return to practice. And I'm not okay. And that was the first time I picked up the phone and phoned a therapist to get support for myself. And I actually needed it.
And
Right.
how did that make you feel, that call where you're like, I'm not okay?
Oh God, it was awful. It was and I couldn't get out of my own damn head about the whole thing. And I remember so vividly. I remember sitting in her office and there was this battle going on inside of my head. I was like, why are you here? What are you doing here? What are you doing here? Right? You don't need to be here. Like, just go home and read some more books. Right? Like you've got all the same
Totally.
books on
Yeah.
your bookshelf as
Mm.
this therapist has on her bookshelf. Like just go home and read them. Like you don't need to be here. Then there was the like, oh God, what if one of my clients sees this therapist or somebody I know sees this therapist and I see them in the waiting like
Oh God, I
the
totally get
right?
that. That is so, yes. Yes. But
And
what
it
you're
was
saying is like even a therapist needs a therapist, just like a coach needs
yes.
a coach.
Yes.
Right. And
Yes.
sometimes that concept is like, wait a second,
Mhm.
I'm coaching someone who's, you know, doing like 1,000 times better than you coach, but you're going to coach
Mhm.
me on da, da, da. It's this crazy thing that happens in our brains. But yes, yes. And then there's that shame of like, what if
What
somebody sees
if?
me?
Right.
Or what if they know that, you know, well, she needs help. So is she going to be able to
Yeah.
help me?
Right.
This
Right.
is, I'm sure this is hitting it, like this is the hitting that point in everybody's like, you know, chest right now. That's like, oh, thank goodness. Yes, you're hearing it right now. Everybody needs help to get through things in life. Everybody. It
Absolutely.
just,
Absolutely.
and it's okay.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
this is great.
That was like my turning point. And so, that's for me what began a process, because it was a process, right? It
Mm.
was a long process that went on for years of surrender. Like that was the beginning of my process of surrender of, oh my gosh, I actually need support. I actually need help. It was my own process of identifying and discovering the patterns in my own life that I vowed I would not carry forward. I don't know if you've ever done this, right? Like you're growing up, Maybe
Oh
it's
yeah.
like during those teenage years or your
Mhm.
early 20s, and you're like, I am never going to do that like my mom did, or I am never, right? Like, I'm never going to do that like my parents did, or never, like, I'm
Totally.
just never going to do whatever it
And then
is.
fast
Feel like,
forward, Shyamala, you end up doing
and
it.
you're there and you're doing it. And you're like, shit,
How'd this happen?
how
And
this
you know
happen?
that Talking Head song is going through my head, you know, and this isn't my life. This isn't my life. I mean, I'm like, oh,
Truly.
and you end up saying those comments where you're
Yeah.
like, I didn't just say that.
I didn't just
And it
say that.
actually, you hear your voice and you hear your mom's voice or your dad. You're like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I
How did the,
just did it. I
right.
just did it.
Right. So that's for me, like that, there, I think we all have these milestone, these markers, these like
Mm.
forks in the
Relaunches.
road.
These
Relaunches. Let's
relaunches. Heck yeah.
relaunches. We all have
Yeah,
these moments.
we
And I think
do.
we have several of them, right? If we
Oh,
are,
multiple. Yeah.
like
A
if
good
we're
relaunches, the mega relaunches, the mini relaunches. Absolutely. Good and
there's
bad.
yeah. And I think if you're committed to leaning in, doing the work, being self-aware, living life, if that's the kind of life you're committed to, then please know you're going to come to those forks in the road, those relaunches again and again and again and again. And that is all part of the process.
I call it progress.
I love
It's
it.
progress.
Yeah,
I mean, if
it
you are
truly
literally getting,
is.
you kind of, I mean, I think I mentioned there's a few things I'm going through right now. And I had a large group call last night where I was laying these out and everyone's like, oh my gosh. And it's not that I tell people all of this so that they're like giving me sympathy, or I want to let them know that you will get through it. And
Mm,
when you lean into it and you can detach, right? That whole detachment from your attachment to like the, oh my God, this is all too much. This is like,
mm,
why is this happening to me? Instead, flip that, this is happening for me.
yeah,
And then all of a sudden you're like, all right, so this is another relaunch. Bring it on. Bring it
right.
on. I'm
Yep.
good.
Yep.
Okay, so you end up really, I mean, this changes you forever. And
Transforms.
yeah, transitions to
Yep.
transformations. And you are
Totally.
now transformed. And I definitely want to get into the juicy stuff about, your podcast is Confessions of a Therapist. I need to have some confessions from the relationship side, like what people are going through right now, what we should be doing, because I'm always fascinated with, going from where I am to that much better, because we all want better relationships, right?
Mhm,
But
mhm,
let's keep going with this transition to transformation.
mhm, mhm. So like I said, it was quite the process, right? And interestingly enough, so, return to work, still seeing my therapist, returned from mat leave. My daughter's, a year now. Now she's a year and a half. I land this gig as a media expert on a television show. Right. So I land a gig as a media expert. I sit on a panel of all men. I was the only female on that expert panel. And I end up doing that for a decade and the next decade. So now I've got all these cameras and I'm mic'd and I'm feeling imposter syndrome, like huge.
Yeah.
Like, why the hell am
Yeah.
I doing? Why did I say yes? Like every single season, I'm like, why the hell did I say yes? What am I doing here? They're going to figure out I don't belong here. And so I think all of these pieces,
Another aha right there for those listening, because again, doctorate, she's got it all. And she's sitting there saying, why am I here?
yeah, convinced
So
that they
it
had made a
doesn't
mistake.
matter.
Yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
it
We
doesn't
all
matter.
have that too. We all have some form of like, I'm not good enough.
Hmm.
I'm not good
Hmm.
enough. Yeah.
Hmm.
Thanks for being so honest here. I love this.
Oh
So great.
yeah, absolutely. And I think, it was interesting is so there are these, I believe in our lives, there are these processes that can happen parallel to one another. And if we pay really close attention, there's often a common thread that pulls through those parallel processes. And so for me, some of those parallel processes that were happening in my own life was, navigating marriage and motherhood, navigating, I had moved out of nonprofit, launched a private practice, media work on TV. And interestingly enough, what I kept seeing in my practice again and again and again, Hillary, was woman after woman after woman that had it all, like on the outside. My clients were ambitious, driven, smart CEOs, entrepreneurs, doctors, lawyers, right? Like high performing women. And the common thread that pulled through all of their narratives, that was also pulling through my own narrative, was I don't know how to show up in my personal life. I am killing it at work. I feel so confident and so competent and so all of the things at work. But Shamala, when I'm trying to have a difficult conversation with my partner, or when I'm trying to set a boundary with my mother, or when I even think about disappointing my sibling, I shrink. I
Yeah,
shrink.
that's, I know that hey, I've had many of those thoughts, right? The outside does not reflect what's going on the inside. And that whole concept around, yeah, you can be killing it at the office and in your business, but that the relationships, you can't show up how you show up at your business sometimes because
Mhm.
it alienates, it separates you. And that gets into, the fear of success and being like, oh, I'm going to somehow, not fit into my family anymore. So, and with your loved one, yeah. So how do you, what do you
Mhm.
suggest when somebody comes to you and they're feeling all these things and you finally get this out? How do you even start?
Mhm. Yeah. So the first place that I start with all of my clients is we really look at what are the relationship templates that were handed to you. We all have relationship templates that were literally handed to. We didn't ask for them. We didn't sign up for them. We didn't evaluate them, right? We had no say in these relationship templates. They were handed to us, right? And often they were handed to us on a very subconscious level. So we're not even aware, right? That we've been programmed. Think of it like coding, right? Like we were programmed with these particular relationship templates. This is how you have a difficult conversation. These are the emotions that are okay to express. This is all the stuff you should feel ashamed about. These are the things you never talk about. These are all the relationship templates that have been downloaded to each and every
That's
one
so
of
good.
us.
I've never heard it like that. So you're taking my bugs to the next level in terms of relationship templates. I think that is what, belief underground surfacing, these limiting beliefs. And
Mhm.
you're saying we come in and when we're young, we're,
Mhm.
basically, we have our template of like, hey, this is how you communicate with a
Mhm.
man. This is how you communicate with others. This is what you do. This is what you don't do.
Yes.
Absolutely. What a great way that you've put this into words. I love it.
Thank you. And it is a template because it takes two to tango. It always takes two to tango. Right. And the reason that's so important and that's so relevant, Hillary, is because when I made that discovery that, wait a minute, this is a template that's made up of at least two people, and I'm one of those two people. So, what that means is that I have a part to play in every single relationship dynamic in my life. Right. And if I have a
And what's your
part,
responsibility? I love this.
right,
Yes.
right. So if I have a
Mm.
part to play, guess what's really amazing, amazing news is that regardless of how problematic, toxic, difficult, challenging a relationship is, I'm also empowered. Like I'm also able to make a change in that relationship template, in that dynamic, in that dance. I can change the steps of that dance just by changing my part in it.
So what would be one way to change your part?
Love it. So there's two pieces. There's two pillars of care for me. There's three pillars of care that I use with my clients, but two pillars of care that are absolutely foundational. The first one is mindset, right? So the first way that we change, and it is the foundation of everything I do. I always say to my clients, like nobody passes go until we do the mindset work. Right. And so, mindset for me is really understanding what your cognitive structures are. What are those limiting beliefs? What are those
Mm.
toxic thinking patterns that you have? We all have them. So it's understanding what those are and then retraining our brain. We can retrain, we can reprogram, we can rewire our thinking.
What are like a couple of the top limiting beliefs that you're
Mm-hmm.
seeing?
Mm-hmm. So, limiting beliefs that I see primarily with a lot of women is I am not good enough,
Mhm.
right? This is not a limiting belief, but it's a cognitive structure that a lot of women carry. If he does X, Y, and Z, that means he doesn't love me. And that is
So
just
true.
not true. Right? Like like that
Mm.
thought is just not true. But it's a very common cognitive structure that has a pretty significant impact on how we show up in our relationships. Right?
Because what you're doing is in that scenario, you're assuming you know what the other person is thinking about the
That's right.
situation.
And you've probably never
Oh.
said anything about it. You've
Mm.
internalized all of that and you are behaving out of that reality.
God, that's
Right.
good.
So, mindset for me is the first piece is that awareness, that ability to really get concrete in terms of what those traps are, what those limiting beliefs are, and then really recognizing that there is a very strategic way that we can reprogram and retrain and rewire our brains. And once we've done that, then we are so beautifully positioned to reprogram and retrain our communication style. This
Mm.
for me is like, if there was one thing I could teach and coach all day, Hillary, it would be communication styles. But I always have to start with the mindset. Like, I can't teach communication until we get the mindset piece dialed in. But communication styles is really understanding that most of us operate out of problematic or toxic communication styles. So, either the passive style of communication, where we don't share what we think, feel, need, or desire, the
So
aggressive
that's the one that, the passive is, would that be the one that is, yeah, I don't need to talk about it. You just close up. You just, I'm not
That's right.
dealing with this right
It's
now.
I'm not going to rock the boat. It's better if I don't
Yep.
say anything. Like fear of
Yep.
conflict, avoidance. That's the
It's
the
too much work to
vibe.
even bring this up at
Not
this
going to go
point.
there.
Yeah.
There's no point. It's not going to make a difference,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
how many
Yeah.
times, right, have we said that? And then the aggressive style of communication is not necessarily loud and robust and yelling and it's not what we think of necessarily. The aggressive style of communication is more about a high need for control and being absolutely tied to the outcome. So whenever I communicate with you, Hillary, I have to get my way. And I don't have to yell and scream necessarily to do it, but I'm going to make sure I get my way because I'm tied to the outcome. There's no freedom in this relationship.
Right. Totally.
That's the aggressive
Yeah.
style. And then the third, my personal favorite to work with, and the one that I have also struggled with, passive aggressive style.
Mm.
So it's that beautiful marriage of the passive style and the aggressive style. So we become manipulative, we become controlling, we have to get our way, but we're going to be really, really clever about it. And we're never going to come right out and express directly what it is that we want or what it is that we need. We're just going to make sure it happens.
So everyone has to be thinking which bucket
Which
do you
bucket?
fall
And listen, it's
into?
probably all three. Let's be honest, right? We can
Yeah.
probably name times where we've fallen into all
Mm.
three, but there's probably one that is your primary style when you are stressed, when you are under pressure, when you are whatever it is, right? That like you're not at your best. You're not functioning in an optimized way. You're probably going to fall into one primary bucket. And what we want to do is actually move towards the assertive style of communication, which is the only way to build authentic intimacy in relationships, right?
Ooh, let's hear about assertive style.
Ooh, it's
Okay.
sexy,
Yeah.
Hillary. It is sexy.
Mm.
So let me tell you
Mm.
about the assertive style of communication. It's truly all about, being number one. And this is where the mindset work, we need it because you've got to be comfortable enough in your own skin to identify and ask directly for what you want, whether you're going to get it or not. So I could say to you, Hillary, I would love to do a guest on your podcast, once a month. Would you have me as a guest like once every single month? Right. So the assertive style of communication is I can ask, but I give you the freedom to say you would probably say no to that request. You've got other guests you want to interview, right? But you've got the freedom and the capacity to say, like loved having you and would love, maybe we'll do another episode, but I don't think I could have you on every single month. And that would not change the energy between us, because I would have so much respect for you and for myself that I would be able to accept that. I've let go of the outcome. I've asked.
You know what I like? I like both sides of this equation. I like the fact that you're asking, so shoot for the moon. And if you don't get the moon, you're still going to end up at the stars. Love that. But then you're also on the flip side, taking ownership for what you could do on the flip side when somebody's doing the same to you. I think this is so great. And it is being assertive, and it's saying, but it's also running through those scenarios that you get throughout your own life, that understanding, well, what do I say? How can I handle certain ways that people approach me that you feel you're giving away your power?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up. Giving away our power actually it's not about the outcome. The outcome is not where our power lies, right? And in fact, when we're tied to the outcome, we've already given away our power. When we're tied to the outcome,
Absolutely.
we have already given away our power, right? So the power actually lies in doing the work before you even have that difficult conversation.
That is so true. And again, when you detach from the outcome, and you're not like, you're accepting, like, however it's going to happen, you put out that goal, you want to do that, this is where you're going, but you're not tied to the how will this happen, how are we going to get there? That's so great. And so by practicing this whole idea of assertive kind of, this assertive nature, what has happened to your clients?
Yeah, such a great question. So one of the biggest things that I notice happens almost immediately is we can see some practical symptoms decrease. They're sleeping better. They're less anxious. They're less tense. There's less overwhelm. There's less pressure almost immediately.
Because you're not ruminating over.
You're not
like,
ruminating.
What am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? How am I going to handle that? You're like, you're giving it up. You're like releasing it.
Yes.
So great.
Yes. So that's almost immediate. Confidence goes up. So anxiety and confidence are correlated. The more anxious we feel, the less confident we feel. So if we can reduce our anxiety, we can begin to increase our confidence. So I see confidence go up like almost immediately once women are able to you just have to execute on the skills and practice them. They're skills. They're emotional intelligence skills, right? It's not, I always say it's not rocket science. It's just no one's taught us this, and we certainly don't have any place to practice it. So
that's, you talk about the EQ code.
That's right. Yeah.
Right?
That's my signature program. That's the incubator, the container. It's an immersive experience specifically for high performing women, because I do think that when you are an ambitious, high achieving, high performing woman, our struggles are a little bit different. We show up a little bit differently in the world. Our brain space is a little bit different. We communicate differently. Right? So it's really about, how do I stay in my feminine energy and hold my space powerfully? And we can do both.
I'll never forget when my mom said, I worked at Oracle, Fortune 100, Fortune even probably higher company for over 10 years. And during this time I came home and my mom was visiting. And I came in like I'm here. And my mom said, Hillary, you're losing your femininity. Let's get that femininity back, because that's your strength.
Yeah.
And for so many of us, we think we have to turn into, that masculine type of energy to be at that successful level. But the people that are truly at that highest level, the women, are learning the secrets that you teach, the secrets that we, really have to embrace, which is harnessing your femininity, harnessing that personal power. I think what you're doing is incredible and so needed, because I remember when my mom said that, I'm like, okay, that's great, but how do I do it? Like, what am I supposed to do here?
Right? It's always the how. Like, it's like, great, but how? What does that look like?
I still have to go back to a male dominated office tomorrow. I still have to, manage 20 plus people. How am I going to do it?
Yes.
It's like, that's the big question. And so you're giving people the ability to understand how to do that, because when you learn that in the business world, you can then take that into your personal world.
That's right. And they are correlated, right? Like how we show
Absolutely.
up personally absolutely influences how we show up professionally, right? Like I can honestly say, if I look at my own journey, and like I show up so differently today than I did 10 years ago because of the work that like my own work that I've done.
Mm. I would say the same.
Mm.
Same for me. And that
Mhm.
is the reason that the relaunch effect came to being. And I, just like you, if once I learned it in business, I could apply it in my
Right.
personal life. I could apply it in my relationships. It works everywhere, but you
Mhm.
got to get the foundation down. That's the key. All right. Well, as much as we could just keep going and going and going, it is time to wrap. And I always do my rapid fire questions. And you have a podcast, Confessions of a Therapist,
Confessions of an
and
ex-therapist.
of an ex, excuse me. I love that because you're no longer you're now doing the group, you're having these programs out there. So the confession side,
Mhm.
you chose confession. Why did you choose that word?
Mhm. Yeah, interestingly enough. So, great question. When I was going through all the muck, I call it the muck, and it felt so mucky. I used to have this ridiculous, now that I look back on it, what a ridiculous thought. But at the time, it felt so real, right? Like I believed it. I had this crazy thought that, oh my God, Shyamala, this is what I would say to myself. You are not only a psychotherapist, but you're licensed as a couple and family therapist. You're totally struggling at home, right? You're struggling in your marriage. You're struggling as a mom. They are going to take away your license. And as I say that to myself out loud, I'm like, how ridiculous is
Mm-hmm.
that? How ridiculous is it that I didn't give myself permission to be human just because I had certain letters behind my name? Right. And so I remember going during this time, though, I always felt very, and I talk about this, I think, in like the trailer episode of my podcast. Deep down inside, I always knew that my life was meant to be lived out loud, right?
I
That my
love
life,
when you said that. I listened to the trail. I love that you said it that way.
Mhm. Mhm. And I just, it was a feeling. Like I wouldn't have been able to articulate it that way at the
Right.
time, but I could just feel it. And so during that time, that's when the title came. It was so long ago and I didn't know it was going to be a podcast. I thought it was going to be a book because I'm so academic and I am working on a book. But
I
at
was
the
going to
time,
say it will be a book. There's no doubt.
right?
It will.
But and who knows what the title of the book will be, but I remember I had this like feeling inside of me that was like, I'm going to put out something in the world and it's going to be called, I thought it was going to be called Confessions of a Therapist. So, the way life went, I built a psychotherapy clinic and I'm outside of clinical one-to-one practice now. I still run my psychotherapy clinic, but my passion is to work intensively and immersively with women, specifically on emotional intelligence.
Mm,
That's what I
that's, yeah,
live and breathe. And
100%.
so that's where the title came from. And I
That's
wanted the podcast to be a space where not just myself, but also my guests could have an opportunity to live life out loud and to overcome shame, to overcome perfectionism, and to really share openly.
that's why I love having you on, because exactly giving people the space to say, you know what, life's not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. It's
Mm-hmm.
hard. There's the bumps. It's really what makes life worth living is how you get through those. How do you get through all the different relaunches? So, next question.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is your best self care tip?
Oof. Um, Oh gosh, two things come to mind. So I am going to say both of them. One is I think we need to start, and I practice these ones actually. Start your day in a way that is nourishing to you. I don't care what that is. That could be lying in bed, quietly meditating for 5 minutes, but start your day in a way where you're pouring into yourself. For me, that's
Which means
exercise.
do not pick up your phone and look
No.
at email or look at your text messages or look at
Yeah.
anything on social.
Yeah. And that, and it looks differently for me, it's
Yeah.
movement, right? I need to sweat. Like that's
Yeah.
how I need to start my day, with a good sweat. I'm just a better
Mhm.
human being when that
Yeah.
happens, but just pick your thing, right? Pick
Yep.
your thing and start your day that way.
So good. All right. So your background is very diverse, and now you're in Canada. What is your favorite food to eat? What
Oh
do
my
you like?
goodness. Favorite? Oh, that's a hard one. But what comes to my food that, like, my partner and I, and as a family, where we go out to, when we're doing something celebratory, like something big, it's sushi. We love sushi, and we love trying all different types of sushi. And it's something I never thought I'd be, into as a kid, like couldn't even imagine, but love sushi.
I adore sushi. Last night we actually went out for Mexican food, and growing up in
Mhm.
LA, Mexican was like a big deal. We did that at least once a
Right.
week. And so I am feeling it. My enchiladas and my taco with my sour cream. I'm like, whoa. That's
Oh.
why I asked the question, because I'm like, I wonder what it is. I wish I had had sushi last night instead of Mexican food, but I didn't. Okay. And let me ask this one. When you're sitting by a poolside, do you have a favorite poolside beverage?
Mm. Do I have a favorite poolside beverage? I'm going to say something super boring, and then I'll tell you the fun one. Is I love, my favorite beverage is actually water. Believe it or not, I
Have you tried
love.
hint? Have you tried hint water?
I have not, and I need
Oh,
to. I need
you
to.
really do.
I really
I
do.
interviewed the CEO of
Did
Hint.
you? Now,
And let me tell you, and I have become a huge fan. I've had it over the years, but now I'm like trying every flavor, and it's so good because it's not sugary. And I usually
yeah.
have one right now. In fact, I'm looking at them. I wish it were on my desk right now. I have them in my office lined up.
Uh-huh.
So yes.
I don't know if it's in Canada. I'm going to have to look into that because I
Yeah,
keep hearing my
Kara was
American
awesome.
friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Talk
you have
about
to
hint
try it.
water. I got
So
to try it.
water is your favorite. I get
Wait,
it.
water's my favorite. An ice cold, like with ice,
Yeah.
like cold glass of water is probably what would be with me poolside, but my fun drink would be a pina colada.
Oh, that is fun. I
Mhm.
always think about whenever I go to Hawaii, that's like, you got to have a pina colada.
You have
Have
to
to
have
do
a
it.
pina colada. Yeah.
Okay, now, what is your favorite beauty product by name?
Love this question. So my favorite, like ride or die, is
Yep.
a luxury mascara that I will spend the money on every single time is the Chanel Le Volume mascara. It is my apps. I can't do the
How
falsies.
long you been using it?
Oh gosh, years.
Okay, so
Years.
your lashes right now, you have this on.
I have this on. I
Oh,
have
it
this
looks
on.
good.
There we go. See
Obviously,
the side
I
profile.
don't. As I'm showing her my lashes. That's so funny. I'm actually using this really cool one called, I think it's Blink, and it's tubes.
Oh, I've
And
heard of
so
this one.
what I got to tell you, I really love this product right now because when I take off my makeup at night, I put warm water on and it just comes off and I have no dark anything under my,
Yes,
love it.
yes.
Okay, but you like the Chanel, and it is the, what was it
Le
called?
Volume.
La
It's the Le
Volume.
Volume
La
in
Volume.
blackest black mascara. It is my ride or die.
Love it. Okay, and last but not least, how do you define powerhouse of possibility?
Powerhouse of possibility. Wow. Was not expecting that question. So how would I define that? I think for me, it's really the ability, the willingness to consistently lean in to those areas of our lives. We all have them that we don't, like those places we don't want to go. Like we all have them. We all have them. Those areas we don't want to look at, the conversations we don't want to have, that person that totally irks us. I also think in those places are possibilities.
Hmm, no doubt. So true. Well, Shamala, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for giving us all of your insights. Wow, this was so good. I am going to go out there and be a little bit more assertive today. I like that.
I
But
love
thank
that.
you again for being here. Really
Oh, my
appreciate your time.
pleasure. My absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Silver Lined Relaunch. If I said something today that resonated with you, will you please head over to iTunes right now and leave us a 5-star review and share this episode with others and help them find the silver linings as well. And don't forget, you can have immediate access to the show notes, any giveaways, and the links to those amazing beauty products at therelaunchco.com/podcast. Until next time, there's always a silver lining, and now is the time to hit the reset button to relaunch those transitions into transformations.